Welcome to this month's episode of the Chronicles of Justice, the Yolo County District Attorney's Office podcast series. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and in this episode we are going to focus on the reason we seek justice, fighting for the victims and survivors of domestic violence in Yolo County. We also want to raise awareness of this heinous crime, as well as give hope to others who are in the midst of a situation with domestic violence at this time in their life. My name is Kevin Clark, and I will be moderating today's podcast. I am joined today by victim survivor Stephanie, her YCDA Victim Advocate Silvia, and Deputy District Attorney Deanna Hayes, who prosecuted the defendant in Stephanie's case. Thank you all for joining us today. First, let's start with Stephanie. Stephanie, tell us how you came into contact with the YCDA's office.
About 16 months ago, I was in a relationship that turned unexpectedly violent. It was about a 2-day process, to keep it short, where I was hit over 65 times, bit about 60 to 70 times, and stabbed about 45 times. Also, my life being threatened more times than I can count, and it resulted in 2 broken ribs, 3 broken vertebrae, and a broken nose.
And what was your first contact like with our office? You came into contact with our office and Silvia?
I came into contact initially with the detectives for Yolo County and gave my statement, and then was contacted by Silvia and came to meet with her, I believe about a couple weeks after the incident itself took place.
And at first, when the case started, were you reluctant or hesitant to testify at all?
I was dead set on not testifying until about 18 hours before I actually went on the stand and testified. I was dead set against it. So yes, I did not plan on testifying at all.
Can you share with us a little bit of what kind of went on in your mind with that?
Yeah, that was a big internal conflict. I think it's just because you're with somebody, like I said, my relationship happened to be almost a year, and they're there one day, and then the next day they try to kill you, and then it's almost like they're dead because they're, of course, no longer with you, that you're not in that relationship anymore. And then I continued talking to him, which was a huge mistake on my part. And of course the manipulation that was in the relationship continues on the phone. And thank God I went and spoke with Deanna and Silvia the day before pre-jury trial. And Deanna really opened my eyes, and I decided I was going to testify.
And being able to testify in court against the defendant, has that helped in your healing process?
Yeah, that helped tremendously. Right after I spoke with Deanna and told her that I would be testifying, that's kind of, I feel like that moment and, the day preceding is kind of the day I feel like I took my power back. So.
Mm-hmm. What was your experience like with your victim advocate, Silvia?
My experience with my victim advocate has been great. She's kept me informed. She's been a support since day one, and I really don't think I'd be where I am or feel as strong as I do today without Silvia or Deanna.
Okay. Stephanie, if you could please share with us what the experience was like for you from the first court date through testifying. What did you feel and what did you go through?
As I had said before, I was kind of dead set on not testifying. However, I did go to an arraignment, I believe the second or third, since there were several in this case. And it was just kind of eye-opening to see, I know where I had been the last several months on bed rest, recovering, and finally see someone that I'd been in a former relationship with, shackled, and kind of opens your eyes this is, where they should be. Clearly, I mean, everyone in the court, you have the courtroom completely, you have their support, and it kind of shows you this person is wrong and I am right. So I think going to the arraignment was a big eye-opener. And I think it made me a lot less hesitant to when I was finally able to speak with Silvia, my victim's advocate, and Deanna, the prosecutor, was a lot easier. When she opened my eyes that day before pre-jury trial, it was a lot easier to say yes because I had already immersed myself, in the court and seen him shackled up, and I was ready. I was prepared to, be in the environment again. Of course, testifying itself was something completely new, but it took that weight off of my shoulders. So I am happy that I did do that, despite my mindset on testifying at the time. And testifying, like I said, was the best decision I feel I made. It really was my chance to look him in the eye, because prior to that, like I said, I had been tortured and bones broken, bitten and beaten and hit and bit and anything else you can think of. But this was my chance to, look him in the eyes and say, like, you did these things to me, because up to this point he hadn't had to hear it. So that really helped me, take back what I feel like he took from me in those 2 days.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing. Now let's move on to Silvia, who was Stephanie's victim advocate here at the office. Silvia, what is the initial process of being the advocate for a domestic violence victim?
When our office gets assigned a case, or should I say when the victim advocate is assigned to a case, our first point of contact is to make contact with that victim as soon as possible, even before the arraignment, so that we let them know this is the hearing that's going to happen, and these are the services that we offer, because we want them to have that point of contact as soon as possible, because we know that they may or may not be interested in it, but we're still there.
Can you explain some of the challenges with victims of domestic violence?
I think the biggest challenge is knowing where they're at emotionally. The first point of contact, I'm just taking that as an example, they can say, I don't want to be with him, I'm ready to testify, let's go. And then at the next court hearing, they can say, well, I've had a change of heart. Regardless, my job is still to be there to support them and encourage them. And again, continuing to offer them the services that's there for them. Whether they want to take advantage of it or not, we're still there.
Okay. And what are some of the ways that the Yolo County District Attorney's Victim Services Program can help domestic violence victims?
We have a lot of referrals and resources. The biggest one we have is the California Victim Compensation Program. They offer services such as counseling, relocation, medical bills, dental bills that are due to the crime. That's the first point, because we want them to apply for that as soon as possible, even if they don't want to take advantage of those services. Let's say in 5, 10, 15 years, they say, oh, I still have these services that I applied for, and they're more than welcome to take advantage of it by then. We also have Empowered Yolo, which is the agency here in Yolo County that helps domestic violence victims with outside services such as counseling, but if it's needed a little bit faster, or shelters, or legal aid, whatever it is. I mean, it's a one-stop shop for domestic violence victims. Empower Yolo also helps with domestic violence restraining orders. They do have advocates there that just do restraining orders, and they can help the victim go to court, fill out the papers, be there with them while it's happening. So it's easier for the victims being overwhelmed with so much things that they're dealing with. That paperwork is one less thing that they have to do. As victim advocates at the DA's office, we also accompany our victims to court when they have to testify. Or let's say there's something really urgent that they want the DA to know if they can't be there, then I'm in court making sure that the DA knows this or that or the other. So we're really there to be their eyes and ears, and more importantly, their support person when they have to go in court personally.
Okay. Thank you, Silvia. And now let's hear from Deputy District Attorney Deanna Hayes regarding the prosecution of domestic violence cases. Deanna, what are some of the challenges with prosecuting cases where there's domestic violence?
I think I'd have to put this into two different categories. I think there are challenges for the prosecution, but there's also challenges that I see for the victim. Starting with the victim, I think it can range from transportation, childcare, money. In Stephanie's case, it was medical care. I mean, she was highly injured, and trying to bring her to court when she had doctor's appointments to balance, when she had comfort issues that were serious. Visually, you could tell Stephanie had been abused, and that was a huge issue bringing her into court. She didn't want to be in public, but these are public courtrooms. So there was, I don't want to say embarrassment, but I mean, because she's so strong. However, I think, people look at you and they don't know your story, so she had to come in and be seen. So that's a huge challenge. I think victims come in and they think everybody's looking at them. They think that the bailiffs are looking at them, the judge is looking at them, that they're going to be judged for wanting to testify, for not wanting to testify, and no matter what they do. So it runs the gamut of what type of challenges they go through. And for prosecutors, I think the challenges are really trying to listen and hear what this person is trying to tell you about their life. Domestic violence, when it comes into court, is one incident, and it can be as graphic and horrendous as Stephanie's. It can also be a slap to the face. But behind every one of these stories, there's a relationship and a lifetime of stories that often a prosecutor can't get from a 3-page police report. So we have a challenge trying to get the whole background of what this victim has gone through and what this defendant has done in order to find what the right outcome is for everybody.
Okay. Is the punishment, the sentencing in these cases, is it just?
It can be, and I think that's always the goal. There does need to be punishment, and that can run the gamut. You have counseling that often is part of the punishment. I think it can be looked at as punishment because it is a time constraint. It is a monetary constraint, but it also does have a rehabilitative purpose. It can be jail. It can be separation. I think the better way to look at these cases is what is restorative for the victim, and often it can be just the fact that they reported to the police, even if a case doesn't go forward through a jury trial. I talked to Stephanie a lot about how I felt in her case, just her getting on the stand and saying what he did to her, we had succeeded no matter what the outcome of this case was. It didn't matter what the final number was for sentencing. The fact that she had the strength after all the time she spent to get up there and say, you did this to me and I'm going to take back my life. That, to me, the day could have ended and the case could have ended right there. We would have had justice, and I think punishment would have been fit. Fortunately, we were also able to get a great resolution in Stephanie's case. So I absolutely do think that the punishment and justice in these cases can be found through the criminal justice system.
And Deanna, do you have a message for domestic violence victims who may be afraid to report?
I would love all domestic violence victims to know that when they report, that they do have services, that they have resources that we know about, and that we do understand. I think statistics will bear out that it takes almost 6 or 7 events before a victim finally reports their abuse to law enforcement. And so that is such a huge hurdle that we are so excited when we do finally get that report, that people should know that, as Silvia talked about and as Stephanie talked about, there are these resources through Empower Yolo, through the DA's office, through counseling, and even other victims of domestic violence that are more than happy to give their stories and let them know that they're not alone and that each case will be handled with individuality and not just lumped into one big bucket of domestic violence, that we do know what they're going through and we're more than willing to work with them to get what they need.
Okay. Thank you so much, Deanna, for sharing. As we're coming to a close today, are there any closing comments that either of you would like to share with the audience?
In the month of October, to bring awareness to the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we wear purple every Friday at the DA's office to try to bring awareness to the community.
Yeah, as a closing comment, kind of going back to what Deanna said, it takes 6 or 7 times to report. Speaking as somebody that wasn't in a typical domestic violence cycle, you don't always have 6 or 7 times. I feel lucky and privileged to be sitting here today because I've been told by doctors, numerous doctors and specialists, that I'm lucky to be alive, and I don't want anyone else to have to wait to that point to where they're lucky to be alive. So, there's great resources at Yolo County. Like I've said, it's been a tremendous support system. So if something is happening, you have great people to help you, and there is a way out, and there is people that will support you in places you can go. And you need to take advantage of it.
Okay, thank you again to Stephanie, Silvia, and Deanna for joining us for this month's podcast. For information about the Yolo County District Attorney's Office and the Victim Services Program, visit our website at www.yoloda.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for weekly updates as we seek justice and do justice.